Hi, friends. We are actually on a Thursday instead of a Sunday doing Unwritten Rules of the Road. And we're joined this evening by the incredible Tom Reimer of the Russian White. Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey,
How's it going over there?
it's warm.
It's warm.
Yeah, warm and allergies, all the tree pollen.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's kind of how it's going over here, except we're going through June gloom in LA. So, yeah. Not the warm part, but the pollen stuff. So,
Yeah.
yes. Yes. Actually, I'm just going to jump right into it. So, when you are on the road and dealing with different climates, do you have any particular approaches to treating ailments?
Lots of tea.
Hmm.
Um, as a vocalist, you gotta, keep the vocal cords good and tea, water, plenty of sleep, proper diet helps. Zyrtec,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know,
Definitely helpful for sure. Yeah.
Flonase. Try not to use that stuff too much, but yeah, I mean, those things are, helpful. So
Yeah. I like doing the saline water as well for the nasal rinse. That helps.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me is, like I said, like water, tea, those things help,
Yeah.
keep everything nice and moist and hydrated as much as possible.
Yeah. Do you have any particular go-tos for your teas?
For the longest time I used this company, it was called Dr. Vox, and they were from the UK.
Hmm.
But I think they've recently, I don't think they are existing currently. So I've just been kind of going to just like generic, just regular green tea and honey.
Yeah. I like doing like if you have it like lemon, lemon definitely helps, especially if you have some phlegm.
Yeah.
So, yes. But lots of honey. That is very helpful for sure. So, when you are on the road again, like when is the next time you'll be on tour? Do you know yet?
Um, I'm not sure at the moment. Like we've been kind of game planning, kind of seeing like what options we have. We've talked about maybe doing some small runs here and there, some one-off shows. But as far as like big extended tours, we don't have anything like on the books at the moment. Um, we just finished up like our second kind of like bigger US tour this past fall. We were out from September to November, and yeah, they trying to think. I think it was like 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. Um, we went like all over the Midwest, down south, East Coast, and then the year before, we were out for. It was kind of broken up into two parts. We had a West Coast run, we had a little tiny break in the middle, and then we had an East Coast run, and I think it was like all together like 5, 6 weeks, something like that. But it was I think it was like we've played in like 40 states now, and like it's been pretty wild to, you know, play that much like all over the country. So
It's like time traveling. It really is. I feel
yeah,
like it's like there's a lot of different cultures, even domestically here, as you go from city to city and you're going through different time zones and different, you know, gosh, like environments, even from the desert to sometimes like south, it's very, very humid as well. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I particularly I don't do well with mountains. So I actually get some like bad like ear issues where my ears don't pop with the elevation changes.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
And it's just like constant like pressure, like we'll just hold for like hours. I remember like we were driving through, I think it was from like Reno to like Northern California, and my ears wouldn't adjust to the altitude changes for like 3 hours, and it was terrible.
Oof.
So, but yeah,
Yeah,
like
that's a lot.
Mike says F mountains.
They're also quite
Yeah,
a lot to navigate just driving wise as well.
yeah,
So, Yeah.
Yeah.
For the audience who is unfamiliar with you, something in particular that I thought was amazing was the way that y'all modified your van. If you could share that with us to share what your tour vehicle was like.
Yeah, so I guess it was right before our US tour that we did with Ayatoya and Comrades and Solemn Shapes. Um, I bought I think it was 2011 or 2012, like Chevy Express van. Um, we took the back seats out. Me and my dad custom built a bunk in the back, and underneath the bunk is like storage. So like, it sits like up a little bit, and then we have like storage for like our gear and merch like underneath the bunk. And then on top of the bunk, we bought a Japanese floor mattress to help save space. And the thing is only like maybe 4.5 inches or so. And but it helps save like on the space like to like the roof. So there's like there's like more room in the van, but it actually feels like a regular full size like mattress. It's very comfortable. Then we kept one of the bench seats in. But yeah, I mean, at one point we had four people in the van. um, Mike, my bandmate, his wife Valerie, she goes on tour with us sometimes, and she helps run merch. But she handmade like all the blackout curtains that go around, and we came up with this cool idea. I think she actually got it from like her parents, but we used tent poles inside of the van to make like a rigging for the
Hmm.
blackout curtains. So we have blackout curtains that wrap around the entire inside. We got USB like rechargeable fans that you can charge them up like during the day or while you're sitting around like sound checks and stuff. And then at night, I mean, they run all night long, and we just clip them to the um, like the tent poles, and it's actually fairly comfortable. But yeah, I mean, it just helped us save like a ton of money from not having to get hotels every night. And we were out on the road for like 6, 7 weeks, and I think we only got like three hotels that entire time. And
Yeah,
then
that's amazing.
our last tour that we did, it was a little colder in some states, like when we were out in like I think like Iowa, some of those other. Um, but yeah, like I think we only got like four hotels that time. But yeah, I mean, it's still not too bad. So only if it's like really super hot, really super cold, we'll splurge for the hotel. But that helped us save so much money, not having to spend like, 100 to 200 bucks a night. Um,
Yeah.
and then like with hotels too, they're always so weird about check-in and check-out times. Um, and I mean, you obviously know, from road life, you're getting into a city, 5, 6 o'clock, scrounging for food or a bathroom, doing sound check, playing the show by the time you like load out like merch and everything, and take pictures with people. And next thing you know, you're not getting back to the hotel room until 2, 3 o'clock, and you still have to drive to the next city. And a lot of times you have to be out of the hotel at not the most convenient hour. um, and so you end up only spending like 5 hours in the hotel room, and I'm just like, we're paying all this money to sit in this hotel room for maybe 5 hours after a gig. Now,
Yeah.
it's not bad if you have a day off, the
Hmm.
following day, but um, for us, we don't like days off on tour because, like when we have days off on tour, um, we're not playing any shows. People aren't seeing our music. We're not selling any merch. We're not making any money, and we're not getting to meet anybody. And it's just we're like hemorrhaging money on days off, like on tour. So even like sometimes like if it's on the way, sometimes we'll play like those weird shows to connect on the tour. Sometimes we end up playing some places that we normally wouldn't play, but logistically it makes sense, and like we'd rather play a show than not play a show. So
Hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Now, do you do your own booking or do you work with a booking agent?
so we've been working the last like couple tours with our good friend Zach Burnett, who sings and runs Comrades.
Hmm.
Um, Dude's a touring machine. He's really rad. I love that kid. Me and him are like best buddy road dogs for life. Um, but we do some of like our own booking. But I mean, Zach helps out a lot too. Um, we both have our ears to the ground, and we have like a lot of connections. From just doing this for so long. So we usually get into some pretty solid situations. We don't really get into too many sketchy situations anymore. Like once in a while, we'll have something that's kind of weird, but that usually doesn't happen too much these days. But yeah, I mean, since Zach's been helping us book, I mean, we've played at just a ton of shows over the past few years.
Yeah. Well, it definitely helps when you have like people that can help like guide you in the right direction and, you know, especially has a real sense for like the music and you know, that sort of thing. So teaming up with Zach is an amazing situation for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. Like, we've definitely spent like the last, I'd say probably 5 years, like really building our team. Zach also helps, like program like our lights, helps with booking. Obviously, we play like a lot of shows together. Like I said, Mike's wife Val, she helps run merch like when we're on the road. Um, we teamed up with Jim and Distortion, so that's been pretty rad. To actually have like label support.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I mean, sometimes it can take some time to find, I think, the people that, that you were like, okay, this feels like a good fit. But once you find it, it is really magic for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's just kind of helped taking everything to like the next level. Because I mean, we've actually been a band like I started this in 2011. And we started playing shows in 2015. So we've been like actively touring for like the past 10 years.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like the first couple of years, like, I don't know, I guess it's like this with probably like every new project, like everybody's just kind of like on the sidelines. They don't really know what to make of you. And they're like kind of hesitant and like, oh, or, are they kind of worthy or not? Um, and I don't know, I just been determined, like I wouldn't take no for an answer. I wouldn't let, anything discourage us. And I always say like we're kind of like the oddball in the goth industrial scene. We definitely don't fit into the traditional molds, that's for sure.
I think we can relate to that for
Yeah.
sure. Well, I mean, out of curiosity, did you have any projects before the Russian White, or was this your first project musically where you were playing live?
So I've actually been playing in live bands since '99.
Yeah.
So I mean, I got 26 years playing live shows.
Hmm.
I mean, I probably played over 1,000 shows at this point. I used to be in some like hardcore metal bands back in the day. Um, and then I was in I was in my first signed band. It was called Bodies in the Lake, and we were like this weird spazzy metal band. It was kind of like Dillinger, Every Time I Die, um, just kind of like weird shit. And then Mike, my keyboard player, he was also in a signed band called Throttle and Dear Lucid, and we had the same management, and that's kind of how our paths crossed. So we had the same management back in the day. So we ended up playing like a lot of shows together, and like I always joked around. I was like, hey, we should get together and jam sometime because it was to find two like synth keyboard players and like metal bands like in this area that we live is like it's like basically like two unicorns,
Yeah.
so and we had a lot of similar influences, like Deftones, Nine Inch Nails, um, things like that. And so there's just like some common ground that like we really clicked on.
I
So
think
like
that's amazing. Like, because it's like I feel like coming from different backgrounds, and then bringing, electronics, with your own take. I think it's probably a big part of what has made your music so unique.
well, we're fabulous,
Yeah.
no, but
No, but that's
Mike
awesome.
Mike tried to steal my keyboard at a show. He was like, "Yo, I'm taking that keyboard." And I wouldn't let him take it, but he was insisting on it. But he's slowly weaseled away from me. So he still plays a keyboard live at shows, but it's I own it, but he plays it.
Just so we know. Yes.
Yeah, he might say differently, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've always been cool with each other. Like I mean, we're pretty much like family. Like now, we've been playing together so long. Like I have dinner with him and his wife and his kids and stuff. Um, so it's been a lot of fun. Especially like being in a band with somebody where it's like it's just easy. It's like very little drama. We're both on the same page. We don't really fight about things. We both have like a firm handle, just like where we're at and where things going. But and that's kind of like something like I don't think it's talked about enough. Is just like just kind of being humble, and just being like down to earth about stuff. And it's weird because in this scene there's so much ego. There's so many people like just like walking around like acting like rock stars and acting like they're hot shit, and then just like like I don't know, that stuff's corny. And it's like they got that, oh, don't you know who I am kind of attitude. And then like we find out we play some of the same venues. We have some of the same size of crowds, and it's just like, come on, man, like chill out. Like put the ego in check. Like when you walk
Yeah.
on stage, like that's when you can let the ego out. Like that's when you can, really own it. That's your time to be a rock star. Like when you walk on that stage. But I don't know, especially with like some of our peers. Some of our peers, it's like, okay, you just played for 80 people, and it's like, well, I just played for 75 people. Like
Hmm.
what's the difference? And
Yeah.
um, I don't know. It's just it's weird to me, and I've encountered that a lot over the years. And it's one of the things that I take to heart is like I always try to be humble, like I always try to be like down to earth with people. I'll sign every autograph, I'll take every picture, sign any poster. And that's probably like one of the biggest compliments that I get is like, just my attitude towards just like fellow bands, bands we share the bill with, the crowds, the fans, just our friends, just having that like chill down to earth attitude.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, it really does come down to like your why, right? Like why you are doing music, why you choose to like
Yeah.
go out and share that live as well. And if it is ultimately just to be able to connect with people, like that's really the heart of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I've had a few instances like over the years where, people have come up to me in like different states and stuff. And, they wanted to meet me for so long, and they take a picture and they're like, oh, your music helped save me or change my life. And it's just like, that's what it's really about. Like that's why we do it. It's definitely not for the money.
Yeah.
People I think that get into it for, money or fame or to name drop or be like, oh, I can get girls or whatever. Like, I don't know, they're just in it for like the wrong reasons in the long run. And usually those acts fade out, like they might be big for a split second, like a year or two, but then they disappear, and they kind of
Yeah.
fall off the radar, and people figure out like what their real intentions are, but then
Yeah.
we're over here and like we've been carving out a career for the last 10 years, and we're still able to do it. um we generally make money, or we're in the green, or break even at worst case. So there's not too many bands that can say that in 2025. So
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, going back to the why, like what initially got you into music?
um I think it was I think like a lot of people that get into music, it's like you don't you you're kind of like the weird kid, or you're like awkward, or you don't really have the self-confidence. So you're kind of like searching for your place, like you kind of like bounce around to like different things. And it's like I was always one of those kids, like I could kind of fit in with any crowd. But at the same time, like I never felt like I belonged anywhere, you know. So like I had a friend, he let me listen to Nirvana, uh, and I was like, well, this is really different, and not that I'm a huge Nirvana fan, but at the time I was just like, wow, this is kind of different. It's kind of unique. And I really never heard a lot of music that I really liked, outside of like Madonna and Flock of Seagulls. I thought that stuff was all right. And so I slowly started dabbling into just trying to make music that I was happy with.
Mm,
So
yeah.
I went through like a long time of just like experimenting and trying to find like that niche, um, like where I kind of felt like, okay, these are my people,
Mm,
like this is where I should be. And I think I started like when I was around like 14 or 15. And I was terrible. I was playing in just crappy high school bands, but I mean that's where you cut your teeth, that's where you learn. Um, and here it is, like I don't know, 25 years later, I'm still doing it. So, um,
yeah.
and like I know for Mike, Mike was classically trained in piano. Um, I think he started when he was like 5 or 6 years old, and he used to go to like different competitions and stuff. And so he definitely has like that background. And then like obviously like most of us, we start hitting those teenage years, and he started getting into like Nine Inch Nails and Deftones, and kind of developing like his own style. I know he loves Prince too. Like Prince is awesome, and Michael Jackson, and some of that like classic like more 80s kind of stuff. Like I love like Depeche Mode. Um, some of those New Order. Actually,
Yeah.
it's funny because like I told Tim from the Lonely Death. I told him like when we were doing like our newest record, Funeral Art, I was like, I want to make a record that sounds like New Order, but with like a metal singer, So like we really dialed in like some of those like those kind of 80s sounds and melodies, with like some pop sensibility, worked in there, but like also some of that like harder edge. Like I wanted to like marry the like those two ideas of like what if like we could kind of like go back in time and have like New Order the band, but then like put me in there as like a metal singer, with that kind of like influence. And I gotta say, like he killed it as a producer, like on this album. I know me and Mike are super proud of that album. It's been an album that we've wanted to make for a long time. Nothing against our older material, but I think it's for like the first time it felt like a true like Russian White album.
That's awesome. Especially like you were saying, if you set the intention where you're like, okay, this is kind of what we're going for, and you actually accomplish it, that's an accomplishment for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and like, do you feel like you have, after having accomplished that, like any kind of inspiration for the next thing to come, or are you like, we want kind of just want to settle into being in this album for now before you dive
Um,
in?
I do have some ideas. Um, there. So we'll back up in time a little bit. So when I first started this project in 2011, I had my best friend from high school, Jesse Quinter. He was a guitar player. He's actually who I started the project with, and he had recently passed away a couple years ago. So we never kind of got a chance to make that Witch House album.
Mm,
We wanted to have some of that like kind of like 8-bit crushed kind of sound, like upbeat, higher tempos, like 160 to like 180, um, kind of high energy, booty shaking songs, like, and so I have some ideas for like the next album to kind of dive into that a little bit, but also still kind of like hold on to like all the good things that we just did on this album as well.
yeah.
Um, but yes, there might be some sprinkled witch house ideas, and we always kind of do. Like we always kind of sprinkle some of that stuff in there, but I think we might like kind of dive into that a little bit more. on the next album. Um, some like crazy like arpeggiated stuff, some like higher tempos. Because I'd say most of our songs kind of sit in that like, like anywhere from like 100 to like 136 kind of BPM, mid tempo ish, maybe a little higher.
Yeah.
But I mean, but it's like it's not. I mean, it's just kind of like what feels right and natural to us. Like we don't really like overthink it too much. Like we just kind of like, oh, okay, well, this kind of sounds cool. Like, this is kind of like a comfortable thing. But I think we might push the envelope a little bit on the next one. So
That's awesome. It's always like, I don't know, it's kind of fun when you start like feeling the seeds when you're like, okay, I feel like something is going in this direction. And it kind of guides you, though midstream it obviously can change, so you never know. But it's always interesting to know, like, okay, here's some inspiration, here's a direction, you know. Yeah.
yeah, and like one of the cool things about like our band too is we have like a couple core elements like that we kind of latch onto, but we don't really tend to box ourselves in like with like our sound. Like we always try to like work in some like cinematic kind of soundscapes, definitely like those 80s kind of like melodies, and then mixed with like some harder edge like kind of metal influences, and that's a broad palette right there in itself.
Yeah.
That gives you a lot of room to experiment. um, and I feel like with anything like that we've done, like, if we're dipping our toes into certain things, experimenting with certain things, but also like not losing, um, not losing the things that kind of got us to this point. So that
Mhm.
definitely gives that definitely gives us like a lot of room to kind of like see how we can kind of like surprise people a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see the next batch of songs. But I mean, I kind of have like a concept in mind. I have some ideas. Um,
Well, something that you mentioned, I wanted to bring up is you mentioned the cinema, and I know that you have just finished a movie. Um, and I mean, first of all, congratulations. That's quite a feat. Um, yes. How long did it take you to put together? If you could chat about that.
yeah, so I actually just finished filming and well directing my first horror movie. It's called The Field. It's the underscore field underscore movie on Instagram. And I started this script about 5 years ago. Um, just kind of outlining some ideas, because that's what I originally went to school for. I really, wanted to try and get into film. When I got out of school, it was like, all right, well, you really have to network and kind of know people to make things happen. And I wasn't really into like just doing corporate work, behind the scenes stuff, like just, you know, TV shows or, regular network things.
Yeah.
I basically wanted to write and direct. And the best way to kind of do those things is just do it yourself, do it on your own terms. And
Yeah.
so I had a bunch of scripts I had left over from college, that I really didn't do anything with. But, the one day I had this idea, um, I started tinkering with this idea of like, these four friends, they kind of go on like a weekend getaway and a bunch of crazy stuff happens, but not in like a traditional horror way, like horror movie kind of way. And I showed my rough outline to a friend, Brian from Jersey, and he does a lot of stuff for like Netflix. He's been on like Amazon Prime, some stuff on like Tubi, and yes, and oh, he's done some stuff for HBO as well. He's done a lot of extra work, a lot of crew work. Um, he was on like Mayor of Easttown. He was on 50 Cent's Power. He was in Hustle with like Adam Sandler. So he had like some solid connections for things, and I showed him the outline for my script, and he was like, "Dude, this seems like a cool idea." He's like, "You should really finish writing the script." Um, so I spent a couple weeks, and like, I, hacked out like a first rough draft, and he was like, "Dude, this is killer." So then I spent a couple more weeks, and I revised it, and I went through a couple revisions, um, and tinkered with some things, and next thing I know, I had a full script. So then we got into casting last year, and um, he kind of introduced me to some people that he's worked with before, and like we had some open casting calls, and then I think it was last August we went and shot the trailer over the weekend. We just did like a concept trailer. So we got together with like some of the main cast and crew. Took like 2, 3 days, shot a concept trailer, um, and then we launched an Indiegogo. I think it was back around January. Between like the Indiegogo and like personal funding and like some outside producers, we raised almost $15,000, and then we like so we took 2 weeks in May, and we shot a feature length movie in 11 days for 15 grand. So
Wow. That's quite a
yeah,
feat.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, it probably should have taken us about 30 days and about $50,000 to shoot, but on an indie level, and like we had people flying in, and like we had multiple locations, and we had like film permits and everything. It was a lot to coordinate. But I spent weeks and weeks planning, meticulously planning, and much like music and touring, it's about logistics and planning. So that translated very easily over to like the movie realm of like coordinating like our shoot schedules and logistics and everything, and who's going to be where and when. And um, we had one day rained out. Other than that, like we pretty much ran on schedule. We had 2 flex days built into the schedule in case there was things that we didn't get to, and we used both those flex days. And yeah, I mean everything went pretty much according to plan, besides the one day where we had a rain out. And then that was kind of cool too, because like on the rain out day, um, we had stunt rehearsals. So we did like stunt coordination, and we did like shot planning and stuff for like all the stunt scenes. And so we were able to do that on the off day. And then Mike even um, hold on a second here. But yeah, we even had Mike and Val come out on set, and they were like helping out with like the cooking and hanging out with us. Um, and then obviously me and Mike will be doing like a lot of the score work, like a lot of the like soundscapes and things like that. Like because we wrote the soundtrack parts for the movie trailer, for the concept trailer. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think it was I mean, all things considered, I think what we pulled off was pretty amazing. And just looking back at the dailies, like like at 2 o'clock in the morning after we just spent like 10 or 14 hours, filming all day, and seeing some of the scenes that we got, I think it's going to be really cool.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be kind of different. I think if you're just looking for like the run of the mill slasher movie or horror movie, you're probably going to be disappointed. But if you're looking for something like very like honest and unique and kind of different, um, I think I think it's going to open a lot of eyes and ears when people finally see it. Because I didn't really have my heart super set on making a horror movie as my first movie. I
Mm.
wanted to do something kind of like more experimental and weird, but I felt like doing a horror movie was probably the easiest to pull off and get people to actually pay attention to it. And then,
Yeah.
hopefully this will kind of open more doors, and, I can do other horror movies, or I can do like other kind of experimental kind of movies. And then, like hopefully get like other producers involved. Um, so I can kind of do some of those like other projects that I had started writing like back in college.
Well, it's something that you said earlier. It was like you were talking about how when you were first starting out with the Russian White, like oh, the field. That is such a beautiful
Yeah.
poster, by the way. That is so beautiful.
Yeah, so my buddy Zach, he did the poster art for us, but he also did the album art for funeral art as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's
I
our
love
graphic
that. Like,
guy.
The small world. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's always amazing when you find, like we were talking about, your people that you can create with, and then it branches off, and then it becomes kind of a multi-dimensional, project, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah. I
But
think it's interesting because you brought up like how you, when you were first starting to tour with the Russian White, like, you were figuring out, like, where do we fit in this world? And same thing with the Field, where you're like, okay, this is a way for us to, like, get started in the film world. And then you can branch off from there, because I'm sure you're learning a lot from this particular experience too.
yeah, we've already gotten asked to do score work for two, possibly three other projects already. You
Nice.
know, um, and we haven't even finished this. It's not even like complete, and people are already like asking us to like do score work for other films. Like it's pretty wild.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, if especially if you feel like really inspired by storytelling and like the cinematic journey, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that, it'd lead to more and more score work for sure.
It's funny because like you talk about like storytelling, and so when we did our music videos for Funeral Art, we actually did it in like a three episode kind of format. So we had Funeral Art was like part one, We Disappear was part two, and then Milo was part three. So there were our three main music videos for Funeral Art, and we basically did it like a short film almost. So they like continued off of each other.
Yeah. Did you have that in mind when you stepped into it, or did it just happen organically?
Well, I didn't have it in mind like when we were writing the music. We kind of just like write songs to write songs, like kind of
Hmm.
whatever comes out comes out. But then like when we were kind of doing like the concept of the music videos, like I think when we were originally like writing the songs, like we were thinking of doing like a like collection of like three EPs with like five songs on each one, and each one could kind of be like their own thing.
Yeah.
But then that really didn't kind of come about. Like it did, like you can have ideas, but sometimes you just know like something's not going that direction or going to work that way. So we kind of took that idea and we just translated it to like, well, instead of like doing like three 5 song EPs, we're just going to do one album, but like we'll have like these three songs kind of like tell a story. So that's why we did like a three-part, like almost like mini kind of movie between the three music videos of like where, they kind of just flowed right together, like as like a cohesive kind of storyline.
That's really cool. I love that. I mean, it feels like you're already in that direction, but I feel like maybe, after having created the Fields, and then stepping into the next album, I'm just curious if you'll end up, bringing more of like integrating your albums and your music videos and more movies like all together. So that's kind of an exciting prospect, I think.
Yeah, the guy Jeremy Sumrall, who directed our music videos, and I kind of like, we kind of tag teamed the concepts to a degree. Um, but he was telling me about like one of the projects that he's working on, and I think he wrote a part in like one of the scripts. And I think he's going to have us do like a cameo in like one of the videos. There's like probably going to be like some kind of bar scene or like rave scene or something, and he's going to have us as like the band on stage like during like whatever those shots are. And so I thought that was pretty cool. He didn't tell me what projects it was for. It was just something just like that we were talking about. Um,
Yeah.
but he was just like, yeah, he's like, I think I'm gonna have the Russian white in like one of the scripts, and he was kind of telling me a little bit about it. I won't give it all away, but he seemed pretty excited about it. So, and yeah, and that's what it's about. It's about networking. It's about helping different people out, and kind of just like growing your networks and seeing like what comes about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, being in bands, first of all, it's just like a seed of collaboration, and getting to collaborate and create, I think, is really the crux of it. It's like it's really the true joy, I think, is that collaboration.
Yeah, and and I think that's one thing, especially in our scene. People get very protective of their project. They're just like, no, this is my little thing. Like nobody's going to touch it or mess with it. And it's like, it's a very much like a control thing. And like, I get that to a degree. But I've also felt like the best work and most interesting work comes out of collaboration. And I feel like maybe it's a little bit more accepted now. Um, I mean, you look at a band like Health. Health collaborates with all kinds of different artists like all the time, um, and they come up with some really great stuff. Um, and I think also like even with us, like being able to work with comrades, like me and him have a collab track that we've been working on. Us and Solemn Shapes, our label mates, we have a track that they wrote, but that I'm going to sing the vocals for. Um, and obviously like Tim with like the Lonely Death, he's been helping produce, our stuff. And I actually did guest vocals for his Electronic Saviors track. So I did some vocals on his track for the compilation. Um, and those are cool like little things that can happen. Um, and then hopefully at some point we get the collab on a track. So um, and then I was just working with the guys from Frontal Boundary. They're going to have a track on our soundtrack for the movie. Um, so it's those cool little things that can kind of happen, where if you're open minded to it, and I think if everybody's like mindset's like in the right place, and people kind of just put their egos aside for a minute, and some really cool like magical things can kind of happen.
Oh, absolutely. I saw it was okay, it's a tangent, but it relates. I saw this really interesting animation that was a collaboration between Salvador Dali and Walt Disney, and it blew my mind. And I was like, like I think you wouldn't know, like, oh, these two could collaborate, and it was beautiful, like really beautiful work. So like you're saying, it's like you keep an open mind. You just never know what magic can come out of it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, not that it's my favorite thing in the world, but the Chelsea Wolf and Converge um collab that came out a few years ago. That was kind of something different that I didn't expect. Some of it I thought was cool, so I was just like, it's always interesting when you get those people together and they're just like, we're just gonna do something wild and unexpected.
Absolutely. I actually had a question. What are the similarities between creating a film versus creating an album?
Ooh, that's a good put me on the spot.
Take your time,
Um,
or we can come back to it too.
I, I think it kind of comes down to like what do you want to say? Like what message do you want to send? Um, and there's all kinds of different messages. It could be one of like, hey, this is entertainment. This is just something that there's not really a ton of meaning behind. Um, but there are some things too. Like I know for me, like a lot of our songs have like kind of cryptic meanings, or like things they might mean to me personally. But I kind of let people pull what they want from them. I don't really like to come out and say like, hey, this is what this song's about. Once in a while, I will, if it's something like more personal. Um, like we have this track, it's called Burial, on Funeral Art, and it's about Jesse. It's about the guy I started the band with and my best friend from high school. And that's a very personal track. It's not a track that we'll probably ever play live. But I don't have a problem talking about that track because that's a very specific thing. Um, but for a lot of the other songs, they have kind of loose meanings to me personally, but I always let, the audience pull their own personal thing out of that, because like once it's released into the world, it's like it's no longer um it's no longer yours at that point. It's kind of
Mhm.
like your gift to everybody, like, hey, here's this, you know um hopefully you can take something from it, or help you work through something. I know a lot of times, like, the music in our scene is kind of like darker, and but it can be therapeutic for some people. And then there's other tracks too, like, hey, like, you're out there on the dance floor for 45 minutes. You're not thinking about work. You're not thinking about your shitty boyfriend or girlfriend or drama or parents. It's like, hey, you're there to have a good time. We're gonna make you shake your ass. So like that's kind of like what we do. And it's like, whether it's something deeper or personal that you get out of it, or if you're just, hey, we're providing the soundtrack for a good night out, both those things are okay. And like, I feel like the same thing with like a movie too. Like, a movie is a form of escapism. You get to escape for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you kind of go to this different world, and you meet these characters, and maybe you see something of yourself in the character. um, Maybe they're going through a challenge or something that you're going through.
Mm.
uh, so there kind of some similarities, but they're very different. um, Making a movie is a lot harder than making an album. um, I feel like if I didn't have to go to my day job, I could probably knock out an album in about 3 months. um, I don't feel like that with a movie. I feel like a movie would still probably take me a couple of years, um, to really kind of develop and do it the way I wanted to do it. Because I feel like the best movies, they have attention to detail. They don't feel rushed. They feel very like, I don't know what the word is. Um, they feel very purposeful. Like a good movie. They feel like it's very intentional. Now, obviously, there's like a lot of movies that are, they're popcorn movies. They're not, you're thinking deep things with these kind of movies. You're just kind of there and having a good time. And um, but some of my favorite movies is like, they kind of make you think a little bit. They dive into some things. There's, definitely a lot of like, definitely like a lot of imagery. There can be some subtle, behind the scenes kind of meanings. I love David Lynch, big Twin Peaks guy, and he was all about that stuff. Same thing with Darren Aronofsky. I love the movie The Fountain. It's one of my favorite
Mm.
movies,
Yeah,
um,
same.
which is kind of a wild ride, and not many people know about that movie. Um, so those are kind of some examples of like where directors kind of do things, and they might have a meaning to them, they might not, and you can kind of let people pull from it what they want to pull from it. And then it's up
Yeah.
to you if you want to tell them like, no, that's what it's really about, or kind of just let, like, hey, you think what you want about it. It's art. It's open for interpretation.
Absolutely. Just wanted to take a quick pause. Pete Russo said, well, several things. Thank you so much for joining us, Pete. Michael Stipe said that he likes when their album comes out because it stops being ours and starts being everyone's. That's a beautiful quote. Also, when the score is good, it is like another character in the story, and it cannot be undersold. 100% on that. Pete was asking, do you feel you would need to be more specific with intent when making a movie as opposed to an album, which had the luxury of more broad interpretation? Um, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You have to be a little bit more purposeful.
yeah,
Um, yeah, especially with like making a movie, because I mean, yeah, it is my vision ultimately. But at the same time, like, um, there's got to be a goal in mind. Like when you're making a movie, especially even on an indie level. But like, we have producers, like we have people that are financially supporting it. Um, and ultimately, you want the movie to have some kind of success. So you have to kind of go into it with like an end goal of like, you can't just be like, oh, well, I made a movie. you know it's like, well, cool. I mean, lots of people just made movies, but like, So like, what's your goal with the movie? So like our goal right now is, we're like I said, we're in post production right now. But then once we have, like a final edit, like we'll start doing the film festival circuit. We'll start doing like some horror conventions, and then hopefully through that we get some traction. Maybe we get some people kind of talking about it, and then hopefully we can get like some kind of distribution deal, or get the movie picked up by like a bigger studio or somebody that wants to like put it out in like a theaters, and get like a broader release. And like I've been working on finding some connections in that kind of world, and I have some contacts that that I'll be trying to leverage when the movie's finally finished editing, and then seeing like what doors it opens.
So, do you have like a specific date yet that's in terms of everything being finished in mind, or?
Ideally, the movie will be edited, um, you know, final edit before the end of the year. And
Mhm.
then, so hopefully towards the end of the year, beginning of next year, we start doing the film festival circuit. And then hopefully 2026 is like the big year for like the field of, either the festival circuit or like eventually hopefully getting like picked up by a distributor, um, before it's, whether it gets a theater release or like ends up on like streaming services. Um, Ultimately, I wanted to make money. So, not that that's the goal, but it also is like I don't want it to lose money, which
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
don't think it will. There was a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and tons of planning, and a lot of attention to detail for this. So, but it's just a matter of like not rushing it.
Mhm. Right.
I feel like sometimes people, they spend all this time planning, whether it's an album or a movie or whatever it may be. And because it's so easy for us to just be like, oh, here it is, you know, and it's cool. Like you get that initial rush, people are like, oh, that's awesome, and like it's up there for the world to see right away. But I feel like sometimes with like bigger projects, bigger things, um, it's really hard to sit on them and wait for the right moment or right opportunity to kind of come along to release the thing into the world. Um, and that's one of the things that like I definitely plan on doing is like, waiting for that right moment for it to be like, okay, here it is. It's finally, you know. Um, and that's one of the reasons why like I talked to some other directors, and they kind of gave me some insights to different like film festivals and like what we could get it into, and possible distributors. And then I've had some conversations even this week, some other contacts and directors of possibly negotiating deals when the time's right. But like anything else, you got to do the film festival thing. People got to kind of see it first on that level, to be like, okay, you know what? Like we can trust you with money. It's like you did this with like next to nothing, so like here's an actual budget. Let's see what you can do with an actual budget.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's ultimately like the long-term goal is like, hopefully this opens some doors for me as a director, or writer, and then, like get a producer has like either, like a studio connection, or they have, other friends that have stupid money that they don't know what to do with. And they're like, okay, like you did this really cool thing with like $15,000, here's 50 grand or 100 grand. Like, like, let's see what you do with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think coming from like being independent artists, it's like I feel like you really have to exercise your creativity to be able to resource like what you can do, like you were saying, in such a small budget in a small time frame. And, and then if you're able to do that, it's like, okay, well, when we are more resourced, like what is it that you can create from there? And that's, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I feel like, when you come from the DIY touring scene, you got to be creative. You got
Hmm.
to be able to figure things out, find ways of making things work when they shouldn't work. Um, And I feel like that going into like the movie realm was very beneficial. You know, it's like, it's like, how do you make something work on a budget that shouldn't work? And then a friend told me, one time they were like, how uncomfortable are you willing to be for your art? You know,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think I think that was Stephen Archer. I think he
Yep. Yep.
said something like that at one point, and it's like, hey, like I've slept on floors, you know, I've eaten ramen, eaten the dollar menu, I ate the peanut butter sandwiches in the van, you know, and like I said, like we've been able to make it work, for the last 10 years, and and taking that mindset to like a movie set, like me and Mike sat down, before we had production on the movie, and we went through all the different locations and we planned out all our meals and like came up with a budget of like what we had to work with and like where we could kind of cut some corners and where we couldn't, you know so and we were able to pull it off, and
Yeah.
we probably shouldn't have been able to, but we did it. So
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think it's also very inspiring for other artists knowing like, hey, it's possible, you know. But like, going back to what you were saying as well is that like how uncomfortable are you willing to get? Um, yes. So, not saying that that's always the case. Like, I think there that is entirely possible to have resources and all of that. But like, just the fact that you were able to like put it together as an independent is definitely a testament to like your creativity for sure.
yeah, I mean, things are possible. It does get uncomfortable at times, but that's where like, you know, not trying to do it all on your own, sitting down with people, people like myself, um, people like Jeremy, people like Mike, his wife, and it's like, okay, here's this problem, here's this situation, here's what we have to work with, here's what we don't have to work with,
Hmm.
and then just kind of like troubleshooting things or different scenarios of like, how do we figure this out? How do we make this work?
Yeah.
And then finding a way. And a lot of times, like, sometimes it takes a little bit more planning, or sometimes it takes a little bit more time. But at the same time, like if you put that time in, if you take the time to prep, um, then a lot of times it ends up saving you money in the long run. One of the things that we were thinking about is like, okay, like, when we're going on tour, 5, 6, 7 weeks, food on the road is expensive. Eating out is expensive, so it's like, well, how can we save money and not eat peanut butter sandwiches every day? And stay like healthy, and it's like, so we brought a little camp stove with us, a little mini propane camp stove, and we brought a cooler, and so like we're going, city to city. Um, we'll stop at a grocery store. We'll buy enough food for maybe a day or two, just so it doesn't go bad in the cooler. We cook all our meals, not all of them, but like a good majority of them. We'll still stop and get an In-N-Out burger, because when they're around, you got to get them. So we don't have those here on the East Coast. So,
Ah, gotcha.
but we did a lot of parking lot tacos. Where we pull up to a parking lot and we bust out the little camp stove, we put it on top of our merch table, and we start cooking up some parking lot tacos right there, and uh, and like when you're able to like make a meal, or like a couple meals for like a day or two, and for your whole crew, not just one person, and only spend like $20,
Hmm.
um, like that's pretty amazing, because you're saving money, but then you're also eating healthy, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, it's just a benefit, whereas like you stop and get like a burger, fries, and a soda, and it's like $15 per person, and you get a crew of, 4 or 5 people, and it's like $60 right there.
Oh yeah, it adds up quickly for sure.
Yeah, I mean, luckily for us, I mean, it's only me and Mike, and sometimes we'll have Zach along or we'll have Val along. So 2 to 4 people is not too bad, but like some of the bands obviously have more members and more crew. It definitely gets to be a lot more expensive. But that was like one of the things where like, okay, like, well, if we can spend, you know, $20 a day, we're spending $150 a week on food, and like that's a huge profit margin where
Hmm.
you're saving money. So,
Yeah.
and like with inflation and everything getting like more expensive, um and also like some of the venues and promoters, they're not paying you crazy guarantees. So you got to be able to, if you really want to make it work, there are ways to make it work, but it's just like, like Steven said, it's like how uncomfortable are you willing to be? But at the same time, it's like you don't have to be super uncomfortable if you plan and you think things out. Like I said,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we pimped out the van, we got the USB fans, we had the blackout curtains. I put reflective things in all the windows to, help keep the light and, the sun, like keep the heat out of the van. And, us making our own food. So we're like, we're not only saving money on food, then we save money on hotels. And then, that's more money for the gas tank, more money for merch going back into our band account. Um, and it's, 2025 to be able to do US tours and come back at broke even or made money is great, especially if, for bands at our level. Um, Another thing that we did too is like, people always talk about like, oh, well, what do you do when the venues don't have shower facilities? We got Planet Fitness Black Card. Planet Fitness Black Card, you can bring a friend. Um, so we would always hit up the Planet Fitness. I mean, there was very few days that we went without showers, because we were able to find a Planet Fitness on the way of almost every place we went. Um, so I mean, I think the Black Card was like $25 a month. But to be able to shower almost every day on tour, like that's a luxury. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike
Yeah, for sure.
Mike said we could share the shower. I'm not sharing the shower with Mike.
See, that's where you
we
draw the line.
Yeah, I don't need to save water that bad. So yeah,
Yeah.
sorry to burst your bubble there, Mike.
Yeah, cooking on the road for sure makes a huge difference. We bring a slow cooker and rice cooker ourselves and bring like non-perishables and that, totally on in the same mind frame of like staying healthy, saving money, all the things. And I like to cook, so that helps. So, yeah. It's
Yeah,
it is always fun to like see in different regions like, things that are really special like you were saying in and out. Like, if there's certain things that you don't get like where you're from.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. We got the
Yeah.
Chicago pizza. We got the In and Out. We got the Texas barbecue.
Yeah.
So hit all the
Yes.
staples.
For sure. Absolutely.
Oh, and the
Well, oh
the
yes, go ahead.
the, the Chicago Italian sandwiches are ridiculous. Next time you're in Chicago, if you haven't had them, the Al's Italian beef sandwiches are mind-boggling. If I don't know if you're vegan or vegetarian, but if you're not, they're amazing.
Good to know. I have not tried these. I've had the Chicago pizza, but yes, I'll have to put that
Yeah,
on the
that,
list.
that was
Yes.
pretty mind-blowing. Somebody told me about it, and I was like, yeah. I was like, well, we're playing out there. I was like, we'll stop and check it out. But yeah, that was pretty wild. So
That's awesome. I think like I think back, it's like part of the fun of touring is getting to like explore like the different food places where people are like, okay, you've got to try this one thing, you
yeah,
know.
and
Yeah.
it's always like some crazy hole in the wall place that's been there for like 80 years.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's fun. And especially if it's fun for Mike because Mike's our like tour cook. And he's an amazing chef. Like he's always in the kitchen experimenting with like different spices and stuff. And yeah, so we eat pretty well on tour. I have no complaints.
That's
I I
awesome.
I drive the van, Val handles the merch, Mike cooks the food. So we all have
I love it.
our little tour jobs.
I think that's important. I mean, I feel like everybody kind of finds the things that they're naturally like attuned to, and then it kind of fits together like a puzzle.
Yeah.
You kind of need that clockwork because there are a lot of moving parts, when you're out and about on the road. And so like having different people, going like, "Hey, I'm the person that knows how to fit all the things into the van somehow magically."
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like especially now, like we're such a well-oiled machine now, like we kind of do it in our sleep. Like we don't really think about it.
Um, Dusty Chalk is asking, "What is your favorite cheese?"
Favorite cheese?
You, yes, do you have a favorite cheese?
Um, I have to be either mozzarella or provolone. They're
Mm,
probably my two go-tos.
yeah.
Yeah, I love mozzarella sticks.
That you really can't go wrong with mozzarella sticks.
No,
Yeah.
mozzarella sticks on anything is pretty banging. So
Yes.
yeah,
And mozzarella is what makes pizza. So, I mean, not all pizza. There's other special fancy pizzas, but yes. Yes.
Mike likes Cooper American.
Oh, I don't think I've tried that cheese. So, actually, I'm curious, like, but you mentioned tacos in terms of like road meals. What other things do you guys like to cook on the road?
Um, we did some. I think we did some rice bowls before.
Yeah,
What else did we do? Well, we did breakfast burritos. Breakfast burritos are a big one.
yeah,
And I mean, they're also just like easy because it's like you can just cook everything up in a pan and just put it in our tortilla and you just throw like some hot sauce or sour cream on it. We do a lot of rice. What we do is we get the 90-second rice
mm-hmm,
and then we'll put like a little oil, a little water in the pan. We'll throw that 90-second rice in there with like some like onions and peppers and stuff, and then like we kind of mix it up. And then sometimes we'll put cheese on it, sometimes we'll put some hot sauce on it. Different variations of like rice, rice and tacos and burrito kind of things. Just because they're relatively healthy, they're relatively simple. Um, they're not too bad like cleaning up wise. They don't get like too crazy messy. Um, or we do some like rice bowls with like veggies, you know, put different sauces on them, different vegetables in them or whatever. Those things are pretty easy as well. And they're
those
also
are
like,
always good. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, veggies are usually not too expensive if you go to a half decent grocery store. Um, Rice is relatively affordable. Um, and then, obviously like we'll do like, it's basically just the same foods, but we'll do different spices or different flavors or different sauces, but just like different variations of it.
yeah,
Uh, you kind of find like those staple things, and it's just like, okay, well, how can I make these couple things, but then just make them different, you know?
mm-hmm,
Um, but yeah, I mean, it keeps things like relatively simple, but then also it keeps it from getting boring as well.
yes,
So,
yes. You must have the spices and the hot sauce, I say. Do you have any
yep.
favorite hot sauces?
I like the hot sauces that Mike makes. Mike has his own pepper garden, and he makes his own like homemade hot sauces. And he has this apple habanero hot sauce.
That
I could
sounds so
literally,
good.
I could literally drink it like right out of the jar.
Yum.
Like, but it's a little too spicy to do that. Um, but that is probably one of my favorites. Uh, I don't know. There's so many. Uh, yeah, I mean, we usually have like three or four different ones. I really like the hot ones, garlic Fresno. That is one of my favorites, and it is amazing on steak tacos with sour cream. I don't know what it is about the combination of those three things, but it's I don't know. It's straight from the devil is what it is. Things should not taste that good, but yeah, I don't. Mike made fajitas one time. Um, Mike says tapatio. Yeah,
Tapatio is awesome.
yeah. We
Yes.
usually have a jar of that on the road with us. But yeah, he was making like fajitas one time or something. It was like steak and veggies and sour cream, and I put that garlic Fresno on it, and I was just like, man, like this is like otherworldly. Like, so that's definitely a go-to.
Yes. See,
I'm trying.
that sounds pretty awesome. Like,
I've been trying to talk Mike into like us making our own Russian white hot sauce. Um,
we have one. I highly recommend it.
oh yeah.
hmm It's called Bottled Truth and it's made from blackberries.
Oh
So,
nice. Did you guys
yeah.
make it yourself or did you like collab with
Wh-
somebody?
Our friend Stephen Baker, he's an amazing chef, and a wonderful friend. And he was inspired to make it. And yeah, so we use a lot of red and black, in our uh, colors. And so he was like, "What if I used like red and black?" So he thought blackberries. I'm half Thai, so he used Thai chilies as well, and it's very flavorful. If I do say so myself, I am a big fan of it. So yeah, that's one of our offerings.
Oh, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, yes. So highly recommend, especially if Mike knows how to make hot sauce.
Yeah, that'll probably be something we do for the next tour, like whenever we go on our next tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, like that's one thing. It's like, and maybe you can provide like a little, I guess, like insight maybe, but it's like I know you guys also do a lot of touring. But it's like once you've kind of got your stripes, so to say, like I think we've done like 9 tours, like 200 shows. I think we've played like 40 different states, and we've done everything from DIY things to like opening up for national acts. It's just kind of like you get to a point and it's just like, okay, like what's the next step kind of thing. It's kind of like where do you go from here? So that's kind
hmm
of like, kind of like where we're at the moment. And it was also kind of like a good timing kind of thing with like the movie, because we just finished a tour in the fall and like we just had a new album come out. And so like we'd finished up the tour and like, we were doing a movie and now it's like we've been kind of thinking it's like, okay, like what's the next step kind of deal? Like what should we do?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we just been kind of surveying our options and, you know, not trying to rush into a situation and, just kind of seeing like um, like I guess like what opportunities kind of come along. Like we did have some offers come through of a couple possibilities, but they didn't really seem like the right situation for us.
Mm.
And that's the thing too, as a band, like it's a minefield, like couple bad moves and it can really sidetrack your career. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys deal with that in Alice. Yeah, you're thinking
Yeah.
about like kind of like what do we do and what do we do, what don't we do, kind of thing.
Well, it's kind of funny because I feel like, honestly, um, we set the intention last year of just focusing on the album, and then we got offered like a bunch of different festivals to play in. And it was like, we absolutely cannot turn that down. It's just a beautiful opportunity to be able to, first of all, get to play with friends because, like, a lot of the festivals are people that are wonderful dear friends. So it's like a reunion. Um, and so we set that intention of like, okay, we're not going to play any shows. Okay, we have to play this show. But to get to the festival, like we had to like make tours to get us there and back, because most of the times festivals don't pay you enough, because we have 6 members in our band, 7 if we have somebody along to help out. And so, yeah, it's like flying 6 or 7 people into a city is a little spendy.
Yeah.
So we have to do tours to get us there and back. So that takes time. And I'm the one that does all the booking. Yeah, and we're in the middle. We're playing Absolution Fest in Tampa in the fall, so I'm in the middle of putting that tour together to get us there and back. So yeah, things have just kind of come into the flow of what we're creating. And as we're doing it, we're like, okay, so we can't make the album as quickly as we thought we would, but I feel like we're getting a lot of inspiration and a lot of information about the music that we want to make along the way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, we're gonna be finishing the album, and then yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're kind of taking a different approach where we're like we're just kind of letting things happen as they do, because that's just kind of what's been happening for the past few years. So yeah, yeah. And in the meantime, just being as creative as possible. So, I'm finishing up a graphic novel that's going to be coming out in the fall, and the album's coming out in the fall, and I'm in the middle of an opera, so it's like we have a lot in our hands. So, yeah, but I do feel like I think, as opportunities come along, it's like you were saying, like whether or not you decide to pursue it. Because there's things that come into our field where we're like, it would take too much to be able to make that happen. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, it's kind of like a similar kind of thing. It's like you get like opportunities and it's like, well, it's cool you're getting opportunities, you're in the conversation, but is it the right place, right time kind of thing?
yeah,
Does it make sense to do? Like things like that. So we
yeah.
kind of did a similar thing like back in the fall because we played Dark City Fest in New Orleans, and so we kind of based the tour around like getting there and back home, and so similar to what you were doing with the Absolution Fest. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so you have to like take those things into mind. But I mean, I think for like probably the first time in like the last like 10 years, like I feel like at this moment, like we're not pushing so hard to find something. We're kind of just like, hey, this big movie thing's happening. Like we got some score projects. We're, working on new tracks. If things come along, like we'll talk about it. Um, kind of thing. But it's not like, it's like you were saying, you're kind of just taking like what comes along and seeing if it's like the right thing to do at the time. So
Yeah, for sure. I think that, um, we've just been very focused on like the creation, I guess. So, and that to me, it goes back to the heart of the why. We just actually very recently had this beautiful writing session as a band, and everybody had this huge smile on their faces, and it just brought so much joy, to me personally, just seeing like everybody having such a good time just creating. And that's really the crux of for us, why we do what we do is just the sheer joy of the creativity and being able to connect with people through that.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's always wonderful meeting fellow kindred spirits like yourself, where I'm like, yay, fellow creative people that love to create and push the envelope. I mean, the fact that you've created a movie is just incredible. I have very high hopes. I can't wait to see it. I myself am terrible with horror movies. I get very scared, but I'll still watch it.
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of different. You know, it's
Yeah.
it's got some of those traditional elements for like the traditional horror fan per se, um, but it's also kind of in a different realm. Like um, my three main inspirations for that movie were Mandy with Nicolas Cage. I don't know if you've seen that.
Mm-mm.
Stand by Me, old '80s movie where they walk along the railroad tracks, and a movie by Ty West, House of the Devil. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have not.
But that was like one of my favorite movies. Because he I think he did it in like I want to say like 2009 or 2010. So it was like shot like modern day, but it's like a throwback to like an 80s style, like almost like VHS, like kind of horror movie. And I thought that was like really cool. And like that's one of the like the ideas that I kind of brought like to the field. So we actually did the movie as like a period piece. So like we did the movie based in like the late 90s, like early 2000s. So like when we were going to film, like we had to find all old vehicles, like we were trying to find like locations that weren't like super modern. Um, I mean, we got old flip phones from like we got old flip phones like off of like eBay because back then there was no iPhones, and people had these little flip phones. And I found like old like CD Walkmans, with like the headphones and stuff. So we had those, and like we were trying to make sure like as much as possible things were like like period correct, like when we were filming, which actually made filming a lot more difficult. um, but I mean, I still think we did a good job, like for what we had to work with. Um, but it was cool to like be able to like because there was a point in time where like I almost thought about like scrapping that idea because I'm like it's so hard to like find like older vehicles and not have everything like super modern, and have like iPhones everywhere and like things like that. But that was like one of the things that like Ty West did with like House of the Devil that I thought was like really cool, and I wanted to see if I could like pull it off as well.
That's really cool. I mean, did that inform like the way that you did the cinematography? Like, did you kind of take
Um,
an approach with older equipment or?
yeah, so we used anamorphic lenses, um, which kind of gave that like very like VHS kind of vibe. Um, so like when we get into like the post production like editing, that'll definitely help shape the final look of the movie. It was something that like that we definitely considered before like we started of like, hey, like, do we want this to look like it's kind of like shot like an older movie, or it could be like one of those like old video store like VHS kind of movies, or do we want this to look super clean, super modern? So I think we found like a good balance of using like modern technology, but like also not making it look like we shot it on like one of those camcorders from you know 1998. So
That's awesome. I feel like some of the ways that people have approached like period pieces, it's always interesting because I think like I imagine with the soundtrack that also probably inspired you to write music maybe if in that time frame too, right?
a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
we're still kind of leaning into like what we normally do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the dark, spooky synth kind of stuff. And a lot of that stuff is rooted in the 80s anyway. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, some of that stuff kind of plays into it, but I mean, we also still like, we still have like our own kind of, I guess, atmospheric kind of style, like when it comes to like doing like a score, like doing songs, or like what songs to include and what not to include. Um, and like what would kind of like fit different scenes. And I feel like that's like where my experience as like a director for music videos really plays like a big part, because I can see like how different songs will fit different scenes, and like which songs will fit where, like when we're doing like the final edit. Um, and I forget who had said it earlier, but it's like the songs and like the score can almost act as like additional like character for the
Mm-hmm.
film, and it definitely helps like elevate moods and create moods. Um, one scene that I think of all the time is like I don't know if you ever seen Donnie Darko, where like they get off the bus and the music's playing, and it's just like it's so like absurd, of like just like hearing that music and seeing like everybody like bop around and just like how everything's kind of playing out. Um, and yeah, there's been a long history of that of like like where uh oh was that Reservoir Dogs, um when he cuts the guy's ear off and like I'd never be able to like hear that like Stuck in the Middle with You song and not see that that part of the movie, like and that's like
Yeah.
one of the things of like like that's how you can take like a song and like certain parts of like movies and you can almost make something like super iconic, um depending on like the scene, how you do the scene and like what song's playing. um I don't think I'm going to go quite that far with the cutting the ear off with that kind of song playing, but it's also like it's a good use. It's a good example of like
Yeah,
how you can use music to make somebody or make an audience like feel something that you want them to feel.
absolutely. I mean, I feel like some movies that I've seen, it's like, gosh, the soundtrack makes it. It really does. I think some of the Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross like soundtracks absolutely really changed the whole vibe of the film. So,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I think that's actually sometimes why when I watch horror movies, I actually cover my ears instead of my eyes because it's like there's something that can be really, really jarring about a soundtrack when it's done well. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I forget. I'm blanking on the name right now, but whoever did the Long Legs score, I'm blanking on the name right now, but that was a score that freaked me out.
Mm.
It
I
was
don't
like
think I've seen that. Yeah.
it was just super uncomfortable. And then when I was reading about it, they purposely put like all of these like little things like in the under layers of the score, like weird like kind of like voice things and like reverse kind of things and like other things like different frequencies. I think that helped create that um just that underlying level of anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just remember watching that movie, and it's not like the movie was like super scary. Like but the movie was, I felt like it was more of like a psychological kind of horror than like a straight up horror movie.
Yeah.
But like that soundtrack for that particular movie was just like I don't know, it was just like super uncomfortable for me and like just gave me like a lot of anxiety like watching that movie. Um, oh, Mike said The Social Network.
Yes.
He said that
Yes.
that was a great soundtrack.
Yeah, I was thinking of I couldn't remember the name, but yeah, definitely amazing soundtrack for sure.
Um, but yeah, I mean, oh my God, the guy who did the guy who did the Fountain soundtrack,
Oh
Clint.
yeah.
I'm blanking on that guy's last name. Clint something, Marisol or something. I don't know. Like that was a really cool soundtrack for the Fountain. Um, yeah, sorry, I'm bad with names. My brain's like spaghetti. So
Yeah, same. Squishy
yeah,
brain is squishy.
yeah,
I know
uh,
what you're talking about though.
yeah. No, that was a
Yes.
great score for the Fountain.
Yeah. Yeah, Fountain was just a beautiful, beautiful masterpiece. I think I was watching the behind the scenes and I think I want to say it took them 7 years or something to put that movie together, which it's so beautiful. I can see the time it was very intentional for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. Highly recommend. I'm seeing some people in the chat saying they haven't seen it. So yes, yes. Please put it on your bucket list. It is awesome. Yes.
that's actually like what my tattoo is. It's kind of hard to see,
Oh.
but
Oh
like
my
it's got the
gosh.
guy and the flowers are growing out of his mouth.
Oh, that
Like
is beautiful.
And I got the tree over here too.
Oh, the tree. Oh, it's so good.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I just love how like the different timelines in that movie kind of like all weave together.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I the story itself, not giving it away, but just the story it's a beautiful story and the way it all interweaves is yeah, it takes you on quite the journey. Yeah. There's certain movies I feel like you walk away from it feeling completely shifted, and that was definitely one of them. Waking Life did that to me too. I did not know what I was stepping into when I saw Waking Life. Um, and afterwards I was like, I feel like I have shifted into a different reality. Yeah. I'm a Linklater fan as well.
Yeah, there's definitely some movies that that are like super inspiring. Um, and like I know for us, like I mean, movies and like kind of vice versa, like movies definitely like inspire like a lot of our music. Like we put like a lot of cinematic elements into them as well. Um, we actually had and well, this is from like a show, but we had a song like on our previous album, The Haunted Beach, and it was actually inspired by the show Ozark. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's there's certain scenes and certain things that can happen in like a TV show or a movie, and it can relate back to like your own personal life or just kind of like make you feel something that like it can inspire a song. Um, and then like me and Mike spent so much time like writing music, it's hard for us to not think of like, in like a visual sense, of like when you're writing something that makes you feel different emotions, like, like what kind of story are you trying to tell with your music? But then like me as like a writer and a director, like I obviously like I write a lot of lyrics. So I'm like, okay, well, what kind of story do I want to tell in an hour and a half?
Hmm.
So that's kind of like a way it kind of translates over.
Yeah. Yeah. It's well, it's interesting in the chat. There's some discussion of different soundtracks. Dusty is saying, I'm not so sure if I'm saying this correctly. Graham Revell does the uncomfortable soundtracks. Um, Graham Revell. And Pete is saying I have both The Crow and The Craft score by Graham Revell, one of my favorite contemporary composers. That's awesome. Also, Charlie Clouser doing the score for Saw. That
Oh,
is
okay.
definitely, yeah. Didn't know that. Very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, it really, it really.
uh, yeah, the first Saw movie was pretty wild. Yeah, I remember being blown away by the first Saw movie.
I have not seen the Saws. I think it goes past Tosh's threshold of horror movies.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I like to read though. I love reading horror books. So, yes, and I will watch my friends who have made horror movies. So I will be watching The Field. Yes,
Yeah,
I'm
I think
excited about that.
I think the field has a lot of crossover potential. Just because it's not like the traditional kind of horror movie. Um, there's not like 50, 60 people getting shot up or hacked up in the movie. And I feel like a lot of horror movies that do that, like it's okay for a popcorn movie because some people like those sorts of things. But I also feel like there's usually like a lack of character development or you don't feel like super connected. Where I kind of went the other direction, like I spent a lot of time on like the character development. Like I wanted people to like fall in love with my characters.
Mm,
Um,
yeah,
so when I do like messed up stuff to them in the movie, like it's like they really feel something, like hopefully, um,
yeah,
and I think it's like it's a way of like having you still have humanity like in a movie, like you still have that human element, like there's still thoughts and feelings involved. And I feel like sometimes with the horror genre, um, sometimes they get away from that a little too much. And again, like it comes down to personal taste, so like there's definitely like a place for it. um and I feel like that's where like when you're making something, it's like, well, what's your end goal, like and obviously like if you have the backing and you have the producers and um then you can have more options open to you. But I also know too, like me as like a first time director, it's like I only get one shot, to make my mark, make my debut, and kind of like this is what I can do. So as much as I thought about those things, like I didn't want it to be like a John Wick horror movie where I killed 150 people, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah.
So I was just like, well, I'm gonna make the movie that I can stand behind and feel like, true to. And then hopefully people enjoy it.
Yeah. I'm excited. I mean, I feel like what you're describing, especially I feel like when I get invested in characters is like really when a story gets under my skin. It's like you find that attachment and that relatability and you're like, okay, yeah, it's something that I really want to see unravel. So, yeah.
And really quick, I will shout out some of our main cast: Brian Enright, Audrey Kavar, Katie Lyons, and Joseph Scarpino. They all absolutely are most super talented people. They all killed their roles. They were already like good actors before they got on our set. And I felt like after we were done, like the stuff that they pulled off and the lengths that they went to really do great performances. I hope that also opens doors for them, in the long run.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. And it's wonderful too that you were able to like, have this more massive collaboration because it's different like you were saying in film versus music. It's like the world is much more expansive and you have many more moving parts and people. So, yeah, it's beautiful that you were able to like really expand that field of creativity for other people like that.
Yeah, I think we had like something like, I don't know, it was like 23 or 25 people like on set, like total like casting crew um throughout the shoot. So that was a lot to coordinate.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Like going from your normal, like around four, like you were saying in the Russian White, to being like,
Yeah.
okay, five times that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little bit. I
Were you a
finally,
little sad though when you finished filming? Because I feel like I get a little like post like sadness when after tours and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Usually like the week after tour where you're kind of like tired, but you miss your road family, you miss your road
Yes.
friends and all the people you see in different cities. Um, and then, it was a very similar feeling because um, we we rented this house and you know, a majority of like the cast and crew, like I think there was like 10 of us, like the main portion. We all stayed in this house together, for the full 10, 11 days. So it was like this kind of like weird movie family thing. And like we had like family dinners and stuff together and, some movie nights. And so you get like that cool, like extended artistic family connection and obviously like all the cool like inside jokes and stuff and I'm sure when you get all kinds of like little inside jokes like when you're on tours and stuff and all kinds of crazy stories and things like that, so
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Each tour is its own beastie, I think. Each tour has its own personality and I love when you get to tour with other people too. Because we're gonna have like different people that we're touring with on the upcoming one and it's like, yeah, it is like a big family, which is wonderful. Yeah. You have your soundtracks too, like the songs that start, you get attached to certain tours with certain songs, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
yeah. I remember like the one tour like we were touring with Zach from Comrades and I think we were driving through like New York or New Jersey and he played like 2 hours of like new metal. It was like Disturbed and Corn and like all these bands like we hadn't listened to in so long. But he was just like hit after hit after hit. He was just playing like top songs, like not just like off like a Spotify playlist. Like he was like hand picking these songs and um it was like the new metal power hour at like 3 a.m. like driving through New York and it was just it was just like a great moment, you know. Um, but then there was like another time, like I think we were in like Idaho, like we were driving somewhere like through Idaho, and Zach wanted to stop and get like pancakes, and he literally took us to this like murder shack, like off the highway, and it was like pancakes, but it literally looked like a shack, like that, like something from like Texas Chainsaw. And I was like, dude, I was like, we're not eating breakfast here. I was like, I don't want to get murdered in fucking Idaho. Like, it's just no. So Zach did not get his murder pancakes in Idaho.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah,
But you live to tell the tale, so
yeah.
yes,
It was
yes.
just like one of those situations. Like, no, this is too sketchy. Like, this is like dirt road, like Pancake Shack, and like no cars parked outside. And I was just like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, you probably make good choices here. Yes. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to take a moment and to thank everyone for hanging out with us and for your like really insightful questions and comments. Really appreciate your time. Tom, thank you so much for sharing your time and insight with us as well.
Yeah,
It's been so inspiring. I feel like it's like not only musically, but just, yourself as a storyteller and a filmmaker. It's amazing, like all the things that you've accomplished. So, congratulations.
yeah. No, I definitely appreciate you having us on. And yeah, I mean, like I said, it's always cool to be able to share things, knowledge, insight, stories, be able to connect with, just like a larger audience, and share like our artistic mindsets and creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, it's to me, I love BTS. I love not just like the actual, like, you know, creation, but knowing what goes on behind the scenes and the thought process. Like, because I feel like it's so interesting to witness an artist in their form because everybody's so unique and so different. So, yeah, yeah, I really appreciate that perspective.
Well, everyone is welcome, and like I said, I'm glad you had us on. Yeah, and like I said, like hopefully we'll get a chance to collaborate, like in the future at some point. Either like on a show or like a track or a remix or something, like um I always like working with other cool people, so um yeah, I don't really care about how big or small, somebody's act is. Like if they're a cool person and their head's in the right place, like that's what I'm all about.
Likewise, I really like love and appreciate getting to connect with under other kindred spirits um and you like you said like seeing like the amazing creativity that can flow out of that. So, yeah. Yeah, well, thank you again, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the movie when it comes out, whenever it's ready, and all the future things that are on deck for the Russian White.
Well, thanks for having
So,
us.
yes, of course. Well, everyone, I hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you so much again. And we will see y'all next week. We're going to be joined by Rituals, an artist from Mexico. His tour was recently canceled. And so we wanted to have him on here and really looking forward to chatting with him. But in the meantime, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.